My wife cheated with her ex, and they planned to steal my $500K business. But when we got to court, she discovered my mother legally owned everything for 10 years, and they never saw coming. What I told them: I'm 35 years old. I own a tech consulting company that I built from scratch over the last 10 years, and I just got out of the worst nightmare of my life. Although in the end, and this sounds weird to say, it ended up being almost satisfying to watch everything crumble for the person who thought she could destroy me. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I met Nicole like 4 years ago, maybe 4.5, at one of those boring networking conferences where you basically go to pretend you care what other people do while handing out business cards. She worked in public relations for a mid-sized firm, nothing spectacular but not bad either. And I already had my company running pretty well at that point. I wasn't a millionaire, but I was doing well. You know, we hit it off immediately. Or so I thought. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and everything seemed perfect. Like one of those relationships where you think you finally found the right person after so many disappointments. We got married 2 years ago. A nice wedding, but not over the top, like 100 guests or so, at an outdoor venue that she loved. And I was happy to give her whatever she wanted because, well, I loved her, and I thought she loved me too. Shortly after we got married, Nicole quit her job in PR. And when I say she quit, I mean she basically said she was tired of the office, of demanding clients, of all that, and that she wanted to focus on us and building a life together. At the time, it seemed sweet to me, like, wow, she wants to dedicate herself to our relationship, how romantic. But looking back now, I should have seen it as the giant red flag it was. The thing is, when she quit her job, I was already generating good income with the company, enough to support both of us comfortably. So it didn't seem like a financial problem to me. But what I didn't anticipate was that she basically became a completely different person. The first few months after she quit her job were good, or at least that's what I remember. She decorated the house, started cooking more, although it was never her strong suit, honestly, and seemed happy. But after that, like a year into being married, she started to change. She became distant, cold, didn't want to go out with me anywhere anymore, was always glued to her phone, and when I asked her what was wrong, she would just say she was bored or tired or any generic excuse. I worked a lot, I'm not gonna lie. My company requires a lot of attention, and there are weeks where I'm working 12 hours a day fixing client problems or overseeing projects. But I always tried to make time for her, like going out to dinner on Fridays or planning weekend getaways. But she always found a reason to say no or to ruin the moment with some passive-aggressive comment about how I only thought about work. Everything exploded like 6 months ago. I think it was in April or May. I don't remember the exact date, but I do remember the moment perfectly. Nicole had left her laptop open on the kitchen table, something she never did because she was always very jealous about her stuff. And I walked by to grab water and saw she had messages open on the screen. I wasn't going to read anything, seriously, because I'm not one of those people who checks their partner's phones or computers, but something about the way the messages were written made me stop. They were from someone named Connor, and the first message I saw said something like, "I can't wait for this to be over so we can be together again." I sat down and started reading, and basically discovered that Nicole had been seeing her ex-boyfriend Connor for the last 6 months, maybe more. It's not clear exactly when it started, but the messages I saw were from months back. But the worst part, and when I say the worst part, I mean this was what really made me feel like someone had kicked me in the stomach, was that they weren't just having an affair, they were actively planning how they were going to divorce me and keep half of my company. The messages were explicit, like Connor telling her, "When we divorce him, you're going to be entitled to half of everything. His business is worth a fortune, and we'll be able to live well for the rest of our lives." And Nicole responding with things like, "I know. I just have to hold on a little longer until the perfect moment comes to ask him for the divorce." There were other messages where they basically laughed at me, calling me naive and stupid for trusting her. And Connor, who apparently didn't have a job and was living off some friend, talking about how with my money, he was finally going to be able to live the life he deserved. Can you believe it? This unemployed guy who couldn't even keep a roof over his head was planning to live off my work, off the 10 years it took me to build something from scratch. I printed everything, all the messages, took photos with my phone too, just in case, and sat there in the kitchen waiting for Nicole to come back from wherever she had gone, probably to see Connor. now that I think about it. When she came back, like 2 hours later, I had the printouts on the table in front of me, and she walked in all smiles like nothing, asking me how my day had been, acting like the perfect wife, and I just told her, "Sit down. We need to talk." The look on her face when she saw the papers was almost comical, like she went from pink to white in 2 seconds, and for a moment I thought she was going to faint or something. I asked her directly, "Who is Connor and what do these messages mean?" And she tried to deny it at first, saying they were misunderstandings or that Connor was just a friend she talked to about her problems. But I cut her off and told her not to take me for an idiot, that I had read everything and knew exactly what they were planning. She finally broke down and admitted everything. The affair, the divorce plans, everything. But she did it in a way that somehow tried to make me feel guilty, saying that I had become distant, that I only cared about my work, that she felt lonely, and Connor was there for her when I wasn't. You know, all that manipulative garbage that people say when they get caught doing something terrible. And then, and this was what really made me laugh at that moment, although I probably shouldn't have, she told me she was going to ask for the divorce anyway, and that she was going to take half of everything because she had a legal right to that after 2 years of marriage. She looked at me like she had won something, like with that half-twisted smile that meant she thought she had everything under control, and I just told her, "Okay, Nicole, if you want the divorce, you'll have it, but I'm not so sure things are going to turn out the way you and your unemployed boyfriend expect." The confusion on her face was beautiful. I'm not going to lie. She asked me what I meant by that, and I just told her she'd see. To talk to her lawyer and start the divorce proceedings, if that's what she wanted. That night she left the house, I guess to Connor's place or some friend's. I honestly didn't care, and I stayed there sitting in the silence, thinking about everything that had happened and what was coming. This is where I have to explain something important that Nicole didn't know, and that her brilliant plan with Connor hadn't taken into account at all. My mother, Helen, is a very smart woman. She worked her whole life in finance and always taught me to protect my assets, and when I started my company 10 years ago, she advised me to put everything legally in her name while I operated the business. It wasn't to evade taxes or anything illegal, but simply as a protection structure in case of client lawsuits or, irony of ironies, marital problems. At that time, I was young. I was like 25 years old and had just ended a difficult relationship, and my mother told me, "Look, you never know what can happen in life. Protect yourself now while you can." So, technically, legally, my company didn't belong to me on paper. It belonged to my mother, although I was the one who managed it completely, made all the decisions, and obviously kept the profits minus what I paid her as nominal owner. It was totally legal. We had contracts and everything properly registered, and it had been that way since day one, years before I met Nicole. She never asked about the legal details of the business, never showed real interest in how things worked. She only cared about the money coming in and what we could buy with it. So she never had any idea about this structure. Nicole hired a lawyer pretty quickly, like within a week of leaving the house, and the divorce proceedings started. The first mediation session was incredible. And when I say incredible, I mean it was one of those moments where you see someone realize in real time that they made a huge mistake. Nicole arrived with her lawyer, a somewhat arrogant guy who had clearly told her she was going to come out of this with millions, and she was there all confident, with that attitude of, "I'm going to destroy you and keep everything." Her lawyer started with the typical speech about equitable division of marital assets, about how Nicole had sacrificed her career to support me, which was a lie because she quit her job by her own decision and never sacrificed anything, and about how she deserved half the value of my company. My lawyer, who knew the whole story and had all the documents prepared, patiently waited for them to finish and then presented the documentation showing that legally I didn't own any business, that everything had been in my mother's name since years before I married Nicole, and that therefore there was nothing to divide in terms of the company. The silence in that room was beautiful, like you could hear a fly, and I saw Nicole's face go through all the stages of grief in 30 seconds, from confusion to denial to absolute rage. She started screaming that it was illegal, that I had hidden assets, that there was fraud, all kinds of crazy accusations. But her lawyer calmed her down and asked for a recess to review the documents. When they came back like an hour later, Nicole's lawyer was noticeably less arrogant, and she looked like someone had told her she'd won the lottery, and then taken the ticket away from her. Obviously, Nicole wasn't going to give up that easily because she and Connor had planned this scam for too long to let it go. She started a smear campaign against me on social media, telling all our mutual friends, who were really more her friends than mine, that I had cheated on her, that I had emotionally abused her, that I was a terrible husband, basically making up all kinds of lies to make me look bad. Some of her friends sent me messages asking if it was true, and I sent them screenshots of the messages between her and Connor, and many of them stopped talking to her after that, which honestly gave me some satisfaction, although it sounds petty. Connor also started sending me threatening messages, saying he was going to make me pay for ruining their plans, that he knew where I lived, just empty threats from a bitter loser. And I just saved them all as evidence, in case I ever had to get a restraining order. The legal process dragged on for months, with Nicole and her lawyer trying to find any possible angle to claim something. They requested financial audits, tried to prove that I had illegally transferred money to hidden accounts, which I hadn't done, even tried to involve my mother in the process, accusing her of being complicit in a scheme to defraud Nicole of her marital rights. My mother, who is 70 years old and is the most honest and upright person I know, had to sit in a deposition and explain to a hostile lawyer why she had decided to put the company in her name a decade ago. And seeing her go through that because of Nicole gave me a rage I can't describe in words. The thing is, the whole structure was completely legal and documented. There was nothing shady or hidden, and every audit and every review only confirmed that. We finally got to court like 2 months ago, and that's where everything officially ended. Nicole's lawyer did his best, painting her as this sacrificing wife who had given up everything to support my career and was now left with nothing, which was so ridiculously false I almost laughed in the courtroom. He presented the fact that she had quit her job after we got married as evidence of her sacrifice, conveniently ignoring that it was her completely voluntary decision and that I never asked her to do it. My lawyer presented all the evidence: the messages between Nicole and Connor, the documentation of the company structure dating back years before the marriage, financial records showing that Nicole had never contributed a single penny to the business, and basically dismantled every argument the other side tried to make. The judge listened to everything, reviewed the documents, and finally issued his ruling. He said that while he understood Nicole might feel disappointed with the outcome, the law was clear that assets that existed before the marriage and were legally separated were not part of divisible marital property, and that the evidence of Nicole's infidelity and her premeditated plans to manipulate the divorce process also weighed in the decision. In the end, Nicole received a small settlement amount, basically the equivalent of what she would have earned if she had continued working during those 2 years she was unemployed. Nothing even remotely close to what she and Connor had planned, and definitely nothing that would allow them to live well for the rest of their lives, as their messages said. I left that courthouse feeling, I don't know, vindicated, I guess, but also exhausted, like mentally and emotionally destroyed by the whole process. 2 years of my life that I thought were real turned out to be completely fake, an elaborate performance by someone who only saw me as an ATM. The part that hurts me the most, even now, isn't so much the money she wanted to steal from me, but the fact that during all those months while she was planning this with Connor, I really believed we had a marriage worth saving, that the problems we were having were normal, and that we could work through them. Every time I tried to get close to her, to plan something special, or to ask her what she needed from me, she was there thinking about how she was going to destroy me, and that's something I struggle to process to this day. I heard recently that Nicole and Connor finally moved in together to a cheap apartment on the outskirts of the city, basically living off what she received from the settlement, which will probably last them less than a year at the rate I imagine they spend. Part of me feels something like pity for her, not for the situation she's in because she completely brought that on herself, but because she realized too late that she had bet everything on a plan that was never going to work and now has to live with the consequences. The other part of me, the honest part, feels satisfied that justice worked in this case, that someone who tried to manipulate the system and destroy another person out of greed ended up with nothing. My mother tells me I should forget about all this and move on, that holding resentment only hurts myself. And she's right. But it's hard not to think about everything that happened when I'm still processing it. The business is still running well. Better than ever, actually. Because now I can focus completely on it without the distractions and drama of a toxic marriage. I've started dating again. Nothing serious yet, because honestly, I'm not ready to trust someone like that again. But at least I'm opening that door slowly. My friends, the real ones who stuck with me through this whole mess, tell me that eventually I'm going to find someone who really values me, and that this experience, as horrible as it was, taught me to identify red flags early. I guess they're right, but for now I'm okay being alone, rebuilding my life without the weight of someone who only wanted to use me. Last week I signed the final divorce papers. I'm officially a single man again after 2 years of being legally tied to someone who turned out to be completely different from who I thought she was. I left that office, got in the car, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe completely. Like without that tightness in my chest I'd been carrying all this time. I drove home, poured myself a good whiskey I'd been saving, and toasted to myself, to surviving this, and to having a mother smart enough to have advised me 10 years ago to protect what I built. I don't know what the future holds for me, honestly, but what I do know is that I'm going to be much more careful about who I trust and who I let into my life. This experience cost me 2 years, a lot of money on lawyers, and a piece of my ability to trust people, but it also taught me that sometimes the decisions you make when you're young, thinking about protecting yourself from the worst, can save you when you least expect it, and that has to count for something.